Heavy rain batters the city streets, the kind of storm that feels like it's trying to wash away secrets. But some stains don't come out that easily. Tonight, we uncover the chilling story of a man who thought his wealth could shield him forever. A respected CEO, praised in business magazines, welcomed into political circles. Yet behind closed doors, he hid a crime so vile it could have destroyed everything. He nearly got away with it, until someone whispered the truth. His name was David Langford, the polished CEO of a multi-million-dollar energy corporation. To the outside world, Langford was everything you'd expect from a modern titan of industry: tailored suits, luxury cars, charity galas. He shook hands with politicians, smiled for photographs, and talked endlessly about innovation and progress. But behind that smile, Langford had enemies. Employees whispered about his temper, his ruthless firings, and how he would destroy anyone who threatened his empire. Still, no one dared speak out publicly. He was simply too powerful. That was until one night when a young intern vanished. The missing woman's name was Rachel Moore, only 23 years old. She was bright, ambitious, and eager to build her career at Langford's company. Her colleagues remembered her as cheerful, always staying late to prove herself. On a rainy Friday night, Rachel was last seen leaving the company's glass tower headquarters. Surveillance cameras caught her entering the CEO's private parking garage. And then, nothing. No one ever saw her alive again. Rachel's family immediately pressed for answers. Her mother described the agony of unanswered calls, the silence on the other end of the line. Police launched an investigation, but the deeper they dug, the stranger things became. Key footage from the garage disappeared. Witnesses who claimed they'd seen Rachel with Langford suddenly changed their statements. Detectives quietly admitted that their hands were tied. And then came the whispers. Langford had paid off officials to bury the case. For months, the investigation stalled. Court records were mysteriously sealed. Police reports redacted. It was as though Rachel had vanished not just from the world, but from the legal system itself. Journalists who tried to cover the story received threatening phone calls. One investigative reporter described how his editor pulled the plug on an article after a private conversation with people upstairs. But behind the scenes, investigators who refused to be silenced were noticing troubling inconsistencies. Langford claimed he hadn't been at the office that night, yet his phone pinged near the building at the exact time Rachel vanished. A private security guard initially told police he saw Langford's car leave the garage unusually late. Days later, his statement mysteriously changed. Every clue pointed back to the CEO, but it was like trying to punch through steel. Money had built a fortress around him. And then, out of nowhere, an email landed in the inbox of an independent journalist. No name, no sender, just a subject line that read, "Check the buried files." Attached was a series of documents, bank statements showing massive payments to city officials, altered police reports with entire pages rewritten, and an unedited version of the missing garage footage. That footage? It showed Rachel entering Langford's car. She never came back out. The journalist described shaking as he watched, realizing the truth was now undeniable. But even then, publishing it would be dangerous. Langford's reach was long, and people who crossed him often lost their jobs, or worse. Still, the journalist pressed forward. Slowly, fragments of the leak began surfacing online, shared across anonymous forums. And the public started asking questions Langford couldn't silence. When the leaks went public, Langford panicked. Shareholders demanded answers, employees whispered in hallways, and reporters camped outside his mansion gates. But Langford still believed he could crush the storm. He called in favors, leaned on politicians, even claimed the leaks were fabricated by enemies of success. And for a moment, it seemed like it might work. Until a second leak arrived. This time, it wasn't just about money. It was about blood. Hidden transcripts suggested that investigators had quietly discovered traces of human DNA in Langford's luxury car. DNA that matched Rachel. The files were suppressed, buried in exchange for fat envelopes of cash. But now, thanks to the anonymous whistleblower, the truth was exposed. The public was outraged. But what stunned investigators most was the final page of the leak, a handwritten note that read, "If I disappear next, you'll know why. There are more victims. Rachel wasn't the first." This wasn't just a story of one missing woman. The whistleblower was hinting at a pattern: multiple victims, multiple cover-ups, and one powerful man hiding in plain sight. As of today, Langford has never been convicted. He walks free, still denying every allegation. But the leaks keep coming, each one darker than the last. And the chilling question remains: if the whistleblower is right, how many others are buried beneath Langford's empire of silence? The sound of heavy footsteps echoes in an empty hallway, papers shuffle in the dark, and somewhere, a whistleblower's heart races. The world thought the story of CEO David Langford had already reached its darkest chapter. But as new leaks surfaced, investigators realized the corruption ran deeper than anyone imagined. This wasn't just about Rachel Moore's disappearance anymore. This was about a trail of silenced voices stretching back years. And someone out there was risking everything to expose it. After the first leak shook the public, law enforcement had no choice but to reopen the case. Langford's company board issued a statement calling the allegations baseless and defamatory. But in hushed tones, board members admitted they were terrified, because if the documents were authentic, they weren't just facing a scandal. They were sitting on a powder keg. Then came the second leak: DNA evidence. Proof that Rachel had been inside Langford's luxury car the night she vanished. The files revealed investigators had found traces of blood on the rear seat, but the report was altered before reaching the courts. The bribe money was staggering. Hundreds of thousands wired to police officials, judges, even a state senator. Langford hadn't just buried Rachel's case. He had built an entire system of silence around himself. The anonymous source grew bolder. In one leak, a chilling message appeared at the end of a document. Rachel wasn't the first. Search the archives. Check 2015. Investigators scrambled to cross-check old missing persons files. To their horror, they found similarities. 3 young women, all connected in some way to Langford's company, vanished under suspicious circumstances in 2015. At the time, each case had been quietly dismissed as a runaway or unresolved. But now, with the leaks pointing directly at Langford, the pattern was impossible to ignore. Protests erupted outside Langford's towering headquarters. Families of the other missing women held up photos of their daughters, chanting for justice. Reporters shouted questions through fences as Langford's black SUV rolled past, windows tinted so dark it was impossible to see inside. Inside the company, panic spread. Employees leaked internal memos showing executives desperately trying to distance themselves. "He's untouchable," one wrote. "But if this keeps going, we're all going down with him." Langford responded with arrogance. At a press conference, his smirk returned. "These so-called leaks are nothing more than a smear campaign," he said. "And I assure you, the truth will exonerate me." But as he spoke, online forums buzzed with a new revelation. A third leak had just dropped. This leak wasn't documents, it was audio. Grainy, distorted, but clear enough. A woman's voice whispered, "I saw him. I saw what he did. They told me to keep quiet, or I'd end up like her." Investigators were stunned. Somewhere out there was a living witness, someone who had seen what happened to Rachel. But the voice was altered, the location unknown. Was the whistleblower the witness themselves? Or was this someone else, still trapped in Langford's shadow? Authorities scrambled to track the source, while Langford doubled down. He called in new political favors, fired his PR team, and hired elite attorneys. Yet privately, insiders claimed he was unraveling. He hardly slept. He held secret meetings late at night. He was even rumored to have a private jet on standby in case he had to flee the country. The pressure was closing in. But then, something happened no one expected. 2 weeks after the audio leak, investigators received a package. No return address. No fingerprints. Inside was a flash drive. On it, dozens of hidden surveillance videos. Some showed Langford meeting with powerful officials in hotel rooms, exchanging envelopes of cash. Others were darker. Disturbingly darker. But the last video? It froze investigators in place. Rachel Moore, alive, terrified, sitting in what looked like a dimly lit basement. The timestamp on the video? Weeks after she was reported missing. If this footage was real, then everything they thought they knew was about to shatter. The screen flickers, grainy surveillance footage rolls. A young woman stares into the lens, her eyes wide with terror. Rachel Moore, alive, weeks after she was reported missing. That discovery cracked open everything, and investigators were about to uncover the horrifying truth. David Langford's empire wasn't built on innovation, it was built on silence, blood, and buried lives. The flash drive containing the footage was a bombshell. In the video, Rachel looked frail, trapped in what seemed like a basement room. A dirty mattress in the corner, a single bulb swinging overhead. She whispered words the camera barely caught. "Please, don't let him hurt me again." The timestamp proved she was alive long after the official investigation had been closed. Which meant one thing: people in authority knew and chose to hide it. The leak ripped through the media. Families of the other missing women demanded answers. The city was boiling over. For the first time, even Langford's closest allies began to abandon him. Investigators dug deeper. Guided by the whistleblower's cryptic notes, they discovered disturbing parallels in older cases. In 2015, Lena Carter, a 25-year-old accountant at Langford's firm, disappeared, officially ruled a runaway. In 2016, Eva Daniels, a marketing associate, quit suddenly, according to HR. Her body was never found. In 2018, Sophia Hayes, a receptionist, was last seen leaving the office late at night. Her file was buried under clerical errors. Each case had one thing in common: unexplained payments to local officials right after the women went missing. The whistleblower was right. Rachel wasn't the first. The most chilling discovery came from property records. Hidden under shell companies, Langford owned a secluded estate on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by tall fences and guarded by private security. When investigators finally obtained a search warrant, they described the place as a fortress of nightmares. In the basement, they found restraints bolted to the walls, stains on the floor, old scraps of women's belongings, purses, shoes, even a broken cell phone. It was no longer just suspicion. It was evidence, and it suggested multiple women had been kept there before vanishing forever. The public was outraged. Headlines screamed, "Sue's Mansion of Horrors." Protesters flooded the streets demanding his arrest. Langford's empire crumbled overnight. Business partners fled. Politicians once eager to stand beside him deleted photos and denied knowing him. But Langford himself? He refused to break. In a rare interview, he leaned forward and snarled at the camera. "These lies won't destroy me. I've survived worse." And in that moment, investigators realized something terrifying. He wasn't worried about being exposed. He was worried about something else. Another leak confirmed their fears. Documents revealed Langford wasn't acting alone. He was part of a wider network of powerful men, corporate executives, politicians, even law enforcement officers, who had been protecting each other for years. The files detailed private meetings, coded messages, and shared bank accounts. Langford wasn't just a predator. He was a cog in a much larger machine. Which raised a terrifying question: how many more victims were hidden across this network? Just when investigators thought they had enough to finally arrest Langford, something unthinkable happened. The whistleblower vanished. The very person who had risked everything to expose the truth was suddenly silent. No new leaks, no trail, nothing. And on the very same night, Langford's private jet disappeared from radar, its flight plan leading into international airspace. The CEO who had built an empire of corruption was gone. But was he fleeing, or was he being protected by the very network he exposed? The world was watching. The man who had bribed, silenced, and buried his crimes for years was finally cornered. David Langford, once hailed as a visionary CEO, was now the most wanted man on Earth. His empire had collapsed. His secrets were out. But would justice finally catch up to him? Or would he slip away into the shadows forever? After his private jet vanished from radar, Authorities launched an international manhunt. Airports were on high alert. His face flashed across news screens in dozens of countries. For weeks, there were whispers. Langford spotted in Europe. Langford bribing border agents. Langford living under a new name. But each lead fizzled out. Behind the scenes, investigators kept chasing the one lifeline they had, the whistleblower. If they could find the source of the leaks, they might finally piece together the last puzzle. Months later, a break came from an unexpected place. A burned-out laptop was discovered in an abandoned safe house. On it, fragments of files traced back to someone shockingly close to Langford's world. The whistleblower was not an outsider. It was one of his own senior accountants, Daniel Wright, a quiet man who had worked for Langford for years. Daniel had seen the money laundering, the bribes, the hidden shell companies. He had seen women escorted into Langford's private estate and never return. Consumed by guilt, Daniel began leaking everything, knowing it would cost him his life. And when he vanished after the final leaks, investigators realized he had sacrificed himself to ensure the truth could never be buried again. The turning point came when Interpol tracked Langford to a secluded villa in South America. He was living under a false identity, surrounded by guards, still clinging to his wealth. The raid was swift. Helicopters thundered overhead. Flashbangs shattered the night. And for the first time, David Langford had no place to hide. He was dragged out in handcuffs, his face twisted in rage as cameras captured the moment. The empire of silence he had built for decades ended in a storm of sirens and blinding lights. At trial, the evidence was overwhelming. Documents, surveillance footage, witness testimonies. It painted a portrait of a predator who thought money could erase lives. Families of the victims sat in the courtroom, clutching photos of their daughters, tears streaming down their faces as the verdict was read. Guilty, on all counts. For once, justice didn't bend to power. Rachel's mother spoke after the sentencing. Her voice broke as she said, "We can't bring our daughters back, but we can make sure no one forgets them. And we can honor the man who risked everything to expose the truth." Daniel Wright's name was etched into history as the anonymous hero who brought down a monster. His courage reminded the world that even the most powerful can fall when someone dares to speak out. But even with Langford behind bars, investigators whispered that the network he was part of still existed. Other CEOs, other politicians, still hiding behind money and influence. The case was closed, but the fight for justice was far from over. And the question remains, how many more stories like Rachel's are still buried in the dark? This has been Dark Justice Files. If this story moved you, if it kept you on the edge of your seat, then join us as we uncover more chilling cases where power and corruption collide. Hit that subscribe button, turn on notifications, and never miss a story. Because the darkness doesn't stop here. And neither do we.